Dr. Sarah Chen stood in her laboratory on Mars, staring at the brain scans floating in the holographic display before her. For 3 years, she had been studying human neural patterns, comparing them to the 47 alien species that made up the galactic Consaual. What she found troubled her deeply, but not in the way anyone expected. Humans were average. Painfully, frustratingly average. The Vrin lived for 300 years and could calculate quantum equations in their heads. The Etherians could phase through solid matter. The Krell possessed natural telepathy spanning light years. Humanity. They were decent traders, reasonable engineers, and forgettable diplomats. 600 years of space travel had proven one thing. Humans were the galaxy's middle children, neither remarkable nor completely worthless. Sarah hated it. She tapped the display, zooming into a particular cluster of neurons deep in the human brainstem. There was something there, something that didn't match any pattern she had seen in other species. It looked like a lock, a door waiting for the right key. She had named it the dormant cascade, because it resembled a waterfall frozen in time, ready to flow if only someone could break the ice. Still obsessing over your ghost in the machine? The voice belonged to Marcus Webb, Earth's ambassador to the Consaual. He walked into her lab carrying 2 cups of coffee, real coffee from Earth, a luxury on Mars. Sarah took the cup gratefully. It's not a ghost, Marcus. It's real. Every human has it. This neural structure shouldn't exist unless it serves a purpose. Marcus settled into a chair, his diplomatic face showing concern. The Consaual High Council isn't happy about your research. They called it dangerous evolutionary tampering. High Arbiter Zelthor of the Vrin personally sent me a warning. Zelthor thinks everything humans do is dangerous, Sarah said, pulling up more data. He's been trying to limit our expansion for decades. The Vrin want the galaxy to stay exactly as it is, with them on top. Can you blame them? Every species that's tried rapid evolution has either died out or caused catastrophic problems. The Nethrak incident destroyed 3 star systems. Sarah turned to face him fully. The Nethrak pumped themselves full of radiation and mutagenic compounds. They were idiots. This is different. This structure in our brains isn't something we're creating. It's already there. It's always been there. We're just trying to understand it. Marcus sipped his coffee, studying her face. They had known each other for 20 years, since they were both young researchers fresh from Earth. He knew that look in her eyes. It was the same look she had when she was about to do something that couldn't be undone. What are you planning, Sarah? She hesitated, then pulled up a new file. I've found a way to activate it. The dormant cascade. It requires a specific combination of quantum field exposure, neural stimulation, and time. 6 months in a specialized chamber. You want to experiment on humans, I want to volunteer. Me and anyone else who's tired of being average. Marcus stood up abruptly, nearly spilling his coffee. Sarah, no. If this goes wrong, if you end up like the Nethrak, we won't. The Nethrak forced change. This is unlocking something natural, something that evolution put in our brains for a reason. Or something that evolution locked away for a reason. Marcus countered. What if that door is closed for our own protection? Sarah smiled, but it was a sad smile. Then we'll finally know. Either way, we'll stop being the galaxy's afterthought. The argument continued for hours, but Sarah had made up her mind. Within a week, she had presented her findings to the United Earth Council. The debate lasted months. Religious leaders called it playing God. Scientists were divided. The public, however, was fascinated. Humanity had always been the underdog in the galaxy, the species that showed up late to the party and couldn't quite match the other guests. The Consaual's response was swift and harsh. High Arbiter Zelthor himself appeared via quantum communication to Earth's council chambers. His species, the Vrin, looked like bipedal mantises covered in sleek dark carapaces. When he spoke, his mandibles clicked in a way that universal translators rendered as cold anger. You will cease this research immediately. The Galactic Consaual has maintained peace for 12,000 years by respecting natural evolutionary boundaries. What you propose is reckless and dangerous, Sarah was allowed to respond. She stood before the holographic projection of the Vrin leader, feeling tiny but defiant. With respect, High Arbiter, humanity has followed every Consaual regulation for 6 centuries. We've limited our expansion, shared our technology, and asked for nothing but a place at the table. Now you want to tell us we can't even study our own biology? We tell you that you cannot risk the stability of the galaxy for your pride, Zelthor said. Your species is young. You do not understand the dangers of what you're attempting. Then help us understand, Sarah said. Share your knowledge. Guide us. Zelthor's large, compound eyes reflected the lights of the council chamber. Some doors, Dr. Chen, are closed for the protection of everyone. We will not help you open this one. And if you proceed, the Consaual will respond accordingly. The transmission ended, leaving the council chamber in heavy silence. Despite the warnings, or perhaps because of them, the United Earth Council voted to proceed. They called it the Awakening Protocol. Volunteers were screened carefully. They had to be adults, mentally stable, and fully informed of the risks, which included the possibility of death, insanity, or transformation into something no longer recognizably human. 10,000 people volunteered in the first wave. Sarah Chen was the first to enter a chrysalis chamber, a specialized pod that would maintain her body while the quantum fields did their work. As the lid closed over her, sealing her in darkness, she thought about Zelthor's words. Some doors are closed for protection. But protection for whom? The chambers were placed in facilities across human space: Mars, Europa, Titan, and a dozen colony worlds. Each volunteer would sleep for 6 months while their brains slowly, carefully activated the dormant cascade. Medical monitors tracked every change, every neural pathway that sparked to life. Marcus Webb stood in the observation room above Sarah's chamber, watching her sleeping form through reinforced glass. Around him, scientists monitored data streams that flowed in real time. So far, everything was proceeding as predicted. The dormant structures in Sarah's brain were responding to the quantum stimulation, growing more active day by day. It's beautiful, one of the scientists whispered. Look at the pattern. It's like her brain is waking up from a very long sleep. Marcus didn't share their wonder. He was too busy worrying about the 50 Vrin observation drones that had appeared at the edge of Earth's solar system the day the protocol began. They weren't attacking, just watching, waiting. The Galactic Consaual had gone quiet. No trade ships arrived. No diplomatic messages came. Humanity's actions had shocked the galaxy into silence, or perhaps into preparation. Marcus had spent his career building bridges between humans and aliens. Now he watched those bridges burning, and he didn't know if they could ever be rebuilt. 3 months into the protocol, the first changes became impossible to ignore. Volunteers began to dream, vivid dreams that they remembered perfectly upon waking each day during their brief consciousness periods. They dreamed of seeing atoms dance, of feeling the fabric of space-time bend under gravity's touch, of touching minds across vast distances. 6 months would tell them if Sarah was right, if humanity had found its key to ascension, or if they had opened a door that should have stayed closed forever. The galaxy watched and waited, holding its breath. The chrysalis chambers opened on a Tuesday morning, Mars time. 6 months had passed since 10,000 volunteers entered their quantum sleep, and the galaxy had spent that time preparing for the worst. Sarah Chen was the first to wake. Her eyes opened slowly, adjusting to the soft light of the medical bay. She felt different, but not in any way she could immediately describe. It was like she had been seeing the world through a dirty window her entire life, and someone had finally cleaned the glass. No, that wasn't quite right. It was more like she had been looking at a painting of the world and now she could see the actual thing. Sarah? Can you hear me? Marcus's voice came through the speakers, tight with worry. I can hear you, she said, and then stopped. She could hear so much more than his voice. She could hear the electrical impulses in the speakers, the vibration of air molecules, the quantum hum of the atoms that made up the walls. It wasn't overwhelming. It was natural, like she had always been meant to perceive these things. She sat up slowly, and the medical restraints that held her snapped. Not because she was stronger, but because she had asked the molecular bonds holding them together to please let go, and they had agreed. Sarah, don't move too quickly. We don't know what... Marcus's voice cut off as Sarah stood and walked through the sealed door of her chamber. She didn't break it or open it. She simply convinced its atoms to move aside, like asking a crowd to part. Marcus stumbled backward as she emerged into the observation room. She looked the same, exactly the same, but there was something in her eyes that hadn't been there before, a depth, an awareness that made him feel like he was a child looking at an adult for the first time. It worked, Sarah said, and smiled. Marcus, it worked. I can see everything, feel everything. The dormant cascade, it wasn't a lock. It was a bridge to understanding reality itself. Across human space, 9,999 other volunteers were waking up with the same realization. They called themselves the Ascended, though they didn't feel superior to other humans. They felt like they had simply remembered something important that they had forgotten. Captain Elena Vasquez was among them. She had been a military officer, volunteering because she believed humanity needed an edge in a dangerous galaxy. When she woke, her first thought was how foolish that belief had been. The galaxy wasn't dangerous. Fear was dangerous. Misunderstanding was dangerous. She found herself floating in space a week after her awakening. No suit, no ship. Just her consciousness expanded to touch the cosmic microwave background radiation that filled the universe. It sang to her, a song that had been playing since the birth of reality itself. That's when the Vryn warship appeared. It was a hunter-class vessel, bristling with weapons designed to crack planets. Its mission was simple: observe and report on the transformed humans. But when its captain saw Elena floating in the void, alive and aware without any protection, something changed. Fear turned to panic. The ship's main cannon charged, a weapon that could punch through a moon. Elena felt it happening, felt the cascade of quantum reactions that would soon unleash destruction. She didn't want to die, but more importantly, she didn't want the Vryn crew to live with the guilt of killing her. So she reached out, not with her hands, but with her mind, her expanded consciousness that now touched the fabric of reality. She spoke to the atoms in the ship's weapon, explained that they didn't need to react violently, that there were other states they could exist in, peaceful states the weapon powered down. Not because it malfunctioned, but because its component atoms had chosen stillness over violence. The Vryn captain, Commander Thraknor, stood on his bridge in shock. His crew stared at their instruments, which showed impossible readings. The human had somehow neutralized their most powerful weapon without aggression, without force. She had simply asked it to stop. Elena's voice came through their communications array, though she sent no signal. "I mean you no harm, Commander. I didn't come here to fight. I came to experience the stars." Thraknor's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of deep distress. "What are you? What have you become?" "I'm still human," Elena said, and she meant it. She still felt her emotions, her memories, her essential self. She was just more than she had been. "We're still us, just awake." The commander said nothing more. His ship engaged its faster-than-light drive and vanished, racing back to Consaual space to report what he had witnessed. The report sparked chaos across the galaxy. The Consaual High Council convened an emergency session. 47 species debated humanity's fate. Some, like the philosophical Etherians, suggested patience and understanding. Others, particularly the militant Vryn, demanded immediate action. High Arbiter Zelthor stood before the council and delivered his verdict. "These transformed humans have broken the fundamental laws of reality as we know them. They manipulate matter at the quantum level with thought alone. They survive in the void of space. They have become something beyond natural life. This is exactly what we feared." "What do you propose?" asked the Etherian representative, her gaseous form swirling in its containment field. "They must reverse the process immediately. All 10,000 must return to their natural state, or humanity must face the consequences." Ambassador Marcus Webb, representing Earth, stood to respond. "The transformation is irreversible. Even if we wanted to undo it, which we don't, we can't. The neural changes are permanent. But I assure you the Ascended have shown no hostile intent." "Yet," Zelthor said. "They show no hostile intent yet. But power corrupts. It is inevitable. Better to contain this threat now before it spreads." "This isn't a threat," Marcus said, his voice rising. "It's evolution. It's humanity finally reaching our potential. Your potential is the galaxy's nightmare," Zelthor replied coldly. "We give you one standard cycle to comply. Begin reversing these transformations, or the Consaual will be forced to act." The transmission ended. Marcus returned to Earth with a heavy heart. He met with Sarah and the other Ascended, trying to explain the galaxy's fear. They listened patiently, their enhanced minds processing not just his words but the emotions behind them. "They're afraid because we're different," Sarah said, "because we change too quickly. They've spent thousands of years believing that slow, careful progress is the only safe path." "Can you blame them?" Marcus asked. "From their perspective, humanity just became godlike overnight. What would we think if one of them suddenly became something we couldn't understand or predict?" Elena, still wearing her military uniform though she no longer needed its protection, spoke up. "We can show them. Prove that we're not a threat." "How?" Marcus asked. Sarah smiled. "By doing what they can't do. By helping." 3 days later, long-range sensors detected an asteroid on collision course with Valera Prime, homeworld of the Valeran species. The asteroid was massive, a planet killer that would arrive in 2 weeks. The Valerans had the technology to deflect it, but they needed time to mobilize their fleet. Time they didn't have. Elena Vasquez volunteered. She traveled to the asteroid, her consciousness guiding her body across light years in a way that normal physics couldn't explain. When she arrived, she didn't push the asteroid or destroy it. She simply spoke to it, to every atom, every molecule. She explained that there was a better path, a trajectory that would miss Valera Prime entirely. The asteroid listened. It changed course. When the Valarans realized what had happened, that a single human had saved their entire species, the galaxy's conversation about the Ascended shifted. Fear didn't disappear, but it was joined by something else, wonder, and for some, a desperate desire for the same power. The transformation had only just begun, and already it was clear that the galaxy would never be the same. The question was whether it would adapt or break under the weight of humanity's awakening. Marcus watched Elena return to Earth, floating down through the atmosphere like a falling star, and wondered if Sarah had opened the door to paradise or to something far more complicated. 1 year after the first awakening, 50 million humans had undergone the transformation. The chrysalis chambers ran continuously across human space, with volunteers waiting in lines that stretched for miles. Sarah Chen had tried to slow the process, to give the galaxy time to adjust, but the demand was overwhelming. Humans had waited 600 years to be special, and they weren't willing to wait any longer. The Galactic Consaual was dying, not literally, but the ancient alliance that had kept peace for 12,000 years was tearing itself apart. The council chambers, once filled with dignified debate, now echoed with shouting and accusations. 3 factions had emerged, each convinced they alone could save civilization from the human threat, or perhaps from itself. The accommodationists, led by the Etherians, argued for acceptance. "Change is the nature of the universe," their representative said during one heated session. "To resist it is to resist reality itself. The humans have transformed, yes, but they have also saved 17 worlds from natural disasters in the past year alone. Perhaps we should learn from them rather than fear them." The isolationists wanted nothing to do with humanity. They began constructing barriers around their space, quantum walls designed to keep the Ascended out. Species like the Torgash retreated to their homeworlds and severed all contact with the outside galaxy. They would rather hide than adapt. And then there were the militants led by High Arbiter Zelthor and the Vryn Empire. They believed the only solution was elimination. Every day they grew louder, more desperate, more convinced that humanity had become an existential threat. "They can manipulate matter with thought," Zelthor told anyone who would listen. "They can survive in any environment. They can travel faster than our ships without technology. What happens when they decide they don't need the rest of us? What happens when they view us as we view primitive animals?" His words found purchase in hearts filled with fear. Soon, half the Consaual species sided with the militants. They began moving fleets, positioning weapons, preparing for a war that nobody wanted but that felt inevitable. Marcus Webb spent his days trying to prevent that war. He traveled between worlds, speaking to leaders, pleading for patience. But he could see it in their eyes. They looked at him differently now. He wasn't ascended, had chosen to remain baseline human, but that didn't matter. He was tainted by association. "You should transform," Sarah told him one evening. They sat in his apartment on Earth, looking out at the city lights. She had manifested a physical body for the meeting, though Marcus knew she didn't really need one anymore. The Ascended could exist as pure consciousness if they wished. "Someone needs to stay human," Marcus said. "Someone needs to be a bridge. You are human. We're all still human. You know what I mean?" Sarah nodded. She did know. The Ascended claimed they hadn't lost their humanity. But Marcus saw the way they moved through the world now, like gods walking among ants, trying very hard to remember what it was like to be small. "They're going to attack," Marcus said quietly. "Zelthor is building a war fleet, the largest in galactic history." "We know," Sarah said. "We can feel the preparations. Ships gathering, Weapons charging, millions of minds all focused on one thought. Destroy humanity before humanity destroys us. Can you stop them? Sarah was quiet for a long moment. Yes, easily, but that's not the question, is it? The question is whether we should. Whether stopping them even to save ourselves makes us the monsters they fear. Before Marcus could respond, alarms began shrieking across the city. His communication device exploded with emergency messages. Something had happened on Mars. The Martian Transcendence Institute, where Sarah had first discovered the dormant cascade, was gone. Not damaged. Gone. A Vryn planet-killer weapon had struck it from orbit. The first shot in what Zelthor clearly intended to be a war of extermination. Except the weapon hadn't worked as planned. The ascended humans on Mars, nearly 10,000 of them, had sensed the attack coming. They didn't run. They didn't hide. They simply reached out together, their combined consciousness touching the massive energy weapon as it fell toward them. They didn't block it or deflect it. They transformed it. The planet-killer weapon, designed to crack worlds, became light. Pure, harmless light that painted the Martian sky in colors that world had never seen before. Beautiful, impossible colors that made everyone who saw them weep. But the intent behind the weapon, the desire to destroy, couldn't be so easily transformed. The Consaual had fired the first shot. The unspoken truce was broken. Sarah vanished from Marcus's apartment without a word, her consciousness pulled back to Mars to join with her fellow Ascended. Across human space, 50 million transformed humans turned their attention to the same problem. What do you do when someone tries to kill you and you have the power of gods? They chose to speak. Sarah's voice, amplified and shared by all the Ascended, echoed through every communication device in the galaxy. Not as a broadcast, but as a direct transmission from consciousness to consciousness. Every being capable of thought heard her words, felt her emotions, understood her intent. We harbor no ill will. We seek no dominion, but we will no longer be constrained by your fear. You tried to destroy us because you don't understand us, so let us help you understand. And then they showed the galaxy what it meant to be Ascended. It wasn't an invasion of privacy, not exactly. The Ascended didn't force their way into anyone's mind. They simply opened their own minds, letting every species see what transformation truly meant. They shared the feeling of touching atoms, of perceiving the quantum dance that underlies reality, of existing in harmony with the fundamental forces of the universe. Some aliens screamed, some wept. Some laughed with joy at glimpsing something so profound, but High Arbiter Zelthor only felt rage. Tricks, he broadcast to his fleet, which now numbered 73,000 warships. Mind tricks to make us lower our guard, but we are Vryn. We will not be swayed by illusions. All ships converge on Sol system. It's time to end this threat permanently. The militants cheered. The accommodationists pleaded for peace. The isolationists hid behind their barriers. The galaxy fractured further, splitting along lines of fear and hope, caution and courage. Marcus stood on Earth watching the stars, knowing that somewhere out there, an armada was coming. 73,000 ships armed with every weapon the Consaual had developed over millennia of warfare. Even if the Ascended could stop them, even if no human died, what would it cost? How many aliens would perish in a battle that nobody truly wanted? He tried to call Sarah to ask her what humanity planned to do, but she didn't answer. All the Ascended had gone quiet. Their consciousnesses merged into something larger, something that Marcus's baseline mind couldn't perceive or understand. The non-Ascended humans, still billions strong, began evacuating to hidden colonies in deep space. Ships launched day and night, carrying those who couldn't transform, who wouldn't transform, or who simply hadn't gotten their turn in the chambers yet. They would survive whatever happened, but the Ascended stayed. Marcus received one last message from Sarah before the fleet arrived. It was simple, just 3 words that somehow contained more meaning than they should. Trust us, friend. Then the Vryn armada dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of Earth's solar system, and the galaxy held its breath once more. The largest military force ever assembled faced 200 million Ascended humans who floated peacefully in the void, waiting. War had come to Sol, but it wouldn't be the war that anyone expected. The battle that would change everything was about to begin, and Marcus realized with cold certainty that victory and defeat might mean nothing in the face of what was coming. The question wasn't who would win. The question was what would remain of the galaxy when it was over. 73,000 warships emerged from the darkness between stars, their weapons systems humming with enough energy to sterilize entire solar systems. They spread out in a battle formation that had been perfected over thousands of years of warfare, each ship positioned to maximize destructive coverage while minimizing vulnerability. Facing them, 200 million ascended humans floated in the void without ships, without armor, without any visible weapons. They simply waited, their bodies drifting peacefully among the planets of Sol System like leaves on a cosmic wind. High Arbiter Zelthor stood on the bridge of his flagship, a massive dreadnought that could destroy a planet by itself. His compound eyes studied the tactical displays, looking for the trap that surely must be there. No species, no matter how powerful, would face a fleet like this without some kind of defense, but the humans just floated, waiting. All ships, charge weapons, Zelthor commanded. Target the transformed humans. Fire on my mark. 73,000 ships responded instantly. Energy signatures spiked across the fleet as weapons that could crack moons powered up. The void filled with the electromagnetic hum of impending violence. High Arbiter, one of his officers said nervously. They're not even raising shields. They're not moving. Because they know they cannot win, Zelthor said, though his voice carried less certainty than his words. They are trying to make us hesitate. Do not fall for their tricks. But before he could give the order to fire, one of the Ascended moved forward. Sarah Chen, first of the transformed, drifted out ahead of the others. Her voice reached every ship simultaneously, not through radio or quantum communications, but directly into the minds of every crew member. High Arbiter Zelthor, you don't want to do this. We know you think you're protecting the galaxy, but you're only feeding the cycle of fear that has held everyone back for so long. You speak of fear while demonstrating powers that break natural law, Zelthor replied. His words carried by traditional communications. He refused to acknowledge the human's ability to speak mind to mind. You are the fear. We are the cure. Then let me show you something, Sarah said. Not with words, but with truth. You believe we are monsters because you don't understand what we've become. So please, let me help you understand. Before Zelthor could respond, before he could order his fleet to fire, Sarah opened her mind completely. But not just to him. To everyone. Every crew member on every ship. Every being watching from their homeworlds. Every conscious mind in the galaxy suddenly felt what it was like to be Sarah Chen. They experienced her memories. Childhood on Earth. The frustration of being average. The discovery of the dormant cascade. The fear and hope as she entered the chrysalis chamber. They felt her awakening. The moment when the universe revealed its true nature to her. But most importantly, they felt her emotions. She wasn't power-hungry. She wasn't cruel. She wasn't planning conquest or domination. She was simply and completely at peace. The transformation hadn't made her into something inhuman. It had made her into something more fully human than ever before, free from the biological imperatives and chemical imbalances that drove so much unnecessary suffering. The fleet held fire. Not because of orders, but because tens of thousands of soldiers suddenly understood that they were about to destroy something beautiful, something that meant them no harm, all except Zelthor. The High Arbiter felt the same connection everyone else did, experienced the same revelations, but his mind rejected them. His entire philosophy, his whole understanding of the galaxy was built on the belief that power must be contained, that change must be controlled. To accept that the humans were peaceful would be to admit he was wrong. To admit that his fear was unfounded, he couldn't do it. Illusions, he shouted, mandibles clicking frantically. Mind tricks. They are invading our thoughts, proving exactly why they must be destroyed. I order you to fire. All ships, fire now. But the fleet didn't respond. The crews, having touched Sarah's consciousness, couldn't bring themselves to attack. They saw the truth now. The humans weren't the threat. Fear was the threat. Misunderstanding was the threat. The cycle of violence that Zelthor represented was the threat. In desperation, the High Arbiter took manual control of his flagship's main weapon. His claws moved across the controls, overriding safety protocols, channeling every bit of power the dreadnought possessed into a single, devastating blast aimed directly at Sarah Chen. This is for the galaxy, he whispered, and fired. The beam of concentrated energy shot across space, bright enough to blind anyone who looked at it directly. It was the kind of weapon that could pierce a planet's core. It should have vaporized Sarah instantly. Instead, it passed through her like she wasn't there. Because in a way, She wasn't. Sarah existed partially outside normal space-time now. Her consciousness spread across multiple quantum states simultaneously. The weapon's energy simply traveled through empty space where her body appeared to be, never touching her because she was both there and not there at once. Zelthor stared in disbelief. He had just fired the most powerful weapon in the Vryn arsenal, and it had accomplished nothing. Worse than nothing. It had proven that the humans were so far beyond conventional physics that military force was meaningless against them. But Sarah didn't retaliate. She didn't destroy his ship or kill him. She didn't even get angry. Instead, she did something far more profound. She ascended him. Sarah reached out with her consciousness, touching Zelthor's mind gently, carefully. She found the dormant cascade in his brain because all sufficiently advanced species had one, hidden away by evolution or design. The Vryn's cascade was locked tighter than humanity's had been, protected by millions of years of cultural prohibition against transformation. But locks could be opened with the right key. Sarah provided that key. Zelthor felt his consciousness exploding outward, his perception expanding beyond anything he had imagined possible. He could suddenly see atoms dancing, feel the quantum foam that underlies reality, perceive the true nature of existence. But more than that, he could feel emotions with a clarity that his Vryn biology had never allowed. He felt his own fear, recognized it for what it truly was, not protective caution, but limiting terror. He felt the fear of his entire species, generation after generation choosing stagnation over growth because growth might mean change, and change might mean loss of control. And then he felt Sarah's peace, her genuine desire for cooperation, her complete lack of malice or desire for revenge. She could have killed him, could have killed his entire fleet with a thought, but she never wanted that, had never wanted that. The High Arbiter wept. His transformed consciousness perceived the weight of his mistake, the terrible cost of his fear-driven aggression. He had almost started a war that would have solved nothing, saved no one, and only added more suffering to a galaxy already filled with it. "I'm sorry," he transmitted to Sarah, his words carrying the full depth of his regret through their mental connection. "I was wrong. We were all wrong." Sarah's response was gentle. "You weren't wrong to be cautious. You weren't wrong to worry about rapid change. You were only wrong to think that violence was the answer. But you understand now, don't you?" Zelthor did understand. He understood everything with a clarity that was almost painful. The transformation wasn't a weapon or a threat. It was liberation from the chains of fear and biological limitation that kept all species trapped in cycles of conflict and suffering. He turned to address his fleet, his consciousness now powerful enough to reach them all. "Stand down. All ships stand down. There will be no battle today. There will be no war. The humans are not our enemy. They never were. Our enemy is our own fear, and they have just freed me from mine." The fleet powered down their weapons. Across the galaxy, billions of beings who had been watching the confrontation felt the tension break, like a wave crashing on shore. There would be no war, no destruction. Just a new understanding, a new possibility. Marcus Webb, watching from Earth, felt tears streaming down his face. He activated his communications device and called Sarah. "You did it," he said simply. "We all did it," Sarah replied, including Zelthor. He chose to understand rather than persist in hate. That's the hardest choice anyone can make. The Vryn fleet began withdrawing from Sol system, but they weren't fleeing. They were returning home to share what they had learned, to tell other species that transformation wasn't death of the self, but awakening to something greater. High Arbiter Zelthor remained behind, floating in space beside Sarah, both of them now ascended, both of them seeing the universe with new eyes. Together they would help build something new, not a galaxy ruled by fear, but one guided by understanding. 5 years had passed since the day the Vryn fleet withdrew from Sol system. The galaxy was transformed, though not in the way anyone had expected. The great weapons had been silenced not by superior force, but by understanding. Fear had given way to something more complex, a mixture of wonder, caution, and slowly growing acceptance. The galactic Consaual had dissolved, not with violence or dramatic collapse, but with a quiet acknowledgement that the old ways no longer fit the new reality. In its place emerged a looser confederation of civilizations, each choosing their own path forward. Some chose transformation, others did not. And for the first time in 12,000 years, that choice was genuinely free. Humanity's greatest gift to the galaxy wasn't their godlike powers. It was permission to change. Sarah Chen drifted through the void between galaxies. Her consciousness expanded to touch the cosmic web of dark matter that connected all things. She was barely recognizable as the frustrated scientist who had once stared at brain scans on Mars. Her body was more suggestion than substance now, a convenient form she wore when interacting with physical beings. But her humanity remained somehow in the core of her vast awareness. She was returning home after preventing a supernova. The star had been ready to explode, which was natural and beautiful in its own way, but it would have destroyed 6 inhabited worlds. Sarah and a dozen other Ascended had gently altered the star's nuclear reactions, giving it another 1,000,000 years of stable life. The civilizations living in its warmth would never know how close they had come to extinction. That was fine. The Ascended didn't do it for gratitude. When she arrived at Earth, Sarah found Marcus Webb waiting for her. He sat in the same garden where they had argued 5 years ago, older now, gray touching his temples. He had never transformed, had chosen to remain baseline human, and Sarah loved him more for that choice than she could easily express. "How was your trip?" he asked as she materialized beside him, taking her most human form. "Productive. Sad. Beautiful." She settled onto the bench, mimicking the need to sit even though she could simply float. "I saw a civilization take its first steps into space. Reminded me of humanity back before we ascended. Do you miss it?" Marcus asked. "Being limited?" Sarah considered the question carefully. She had been asked it many times by many people, and her answer always evolved. "I miss the simplicity sometimes. When I was fully human, I only had to worry about the things immediately around me. Now I can feel the suffering of billions, the heat death of stars, the eventual ending of everything. It's overwhelming if I let it be. But you don't regret it. Never. Because I also feel the joy of those billions, the birth of stars, the beginning of new things, and I have the power to help, to make things better. How could I regret that?" A child ran past them laughing, chasing a butterfly. She was half Ascended, born to parents where one had transformed and one had not. She could exist in both states, shifting between them as easily as breathing. Children like her were becoming more common, bridges between the old humanity and the new. "The Etherians are requesting teachers," Marcus said, turning to business. "They want to ascend their entire species, but they want guidance. They're afraid of losing themselves in the process." "We'll send someone," Sarah said. "Probably Elena. She's good at helping people maintain their sense of self during transformation." Elena Vasquez, once a military captain, now spent her days teaching others how to ascend without losing their essential nature. It was delicate work, requiring both power and gentleness. She was perfect for it. "The Torgash are opening their borders," Marcus continued, consulting his tablet. "They've been isolated for 5 years, but their younger generation wants contact with the outside galaxy. They want to see the Ascended for themselves," Sarah nodded. Many species had hidden after humanity's transformation, building walls to keep change out. But walls couldn't hold forever. Eventually, curiosity and hope overcame fear. "And Zelthor sends his regards," Marcus added with a slight smile. "He's on the far side of the galaxy, helping a species called the Ven deal with an extinction-level asteroid impact." Sarah smiled at the mention of the former High Arbiter. His transformation had been the most dramatic of all, from fearful military leader to peaceful guardian. He threw himself into helping others with an intensity that suggested he was trying to make up for the war he had almost started. Sarah had tried to tell him he didn't need redemption. That understanding was enough, but Vryn guilt ran deep. "What about requests for transformation?" Sarah asked. "How many this week?" Marcus's expression grew serious. 3 billion, from 40 different species. We're overwhelmed with applications. This was the galaxy's great crisis now, though it was a crisis of hope rather than fear. Once aliens saw that transformation didn't destroy the self, that it was possible to become something greater while remaining fundamentally yourself, everyone wanted it. But the process couldn't be rushed. Each species had their own dormant cascade, their own quantum signature that needed to be carefully mapped before transformation could begin safely. "We can handle 3 billion, Sarah said. "It'll take time, but we have time." "The collective is worried," Marcus said quietly. The collective was what they called the loose organization of ascended beings, humans and aliens alike, who coordinated their efforts to help the galaxy. They think we're moving too fast, transforming too many species at once. They're afraid we'll create instability. They're not wrong to worry, Sarah admitted. Transformation is beautiful, but it's also disruptive. Species that ascend change their relationship with resources, with territory, with each other. The old power structures collapse. Some people don't handle that well. Like the Remnant. Marcus's voice held disgust. The Remnant was what they called the groups across the galaxy who violently rejected transformation. They saw the Ascended as abominations, as creatures who had betrayed their own nature. Some were religious zealots. Others were simply afraid of change. They had committed terrorist attacks against chrysalis chambers, killing volunteers before they could transform. "We'll figure it out," Sarah said, though she didn't feel as confident as she sounded. "Every great change has resistance. The important thing is not to respond with violence. We have to show them that we're still the people they knew, just better able to help." A notification chimed on Marcus's tablet. His expression shifted to surprise, then concern. "What is it?" Sarah asked. "Long-range sensors have detected something at the edge of the galaxy. A ship, but not like any we've seen before. The hull signature suggests it's from outside our galaxy." Sarah's consciousness expanded instantly, reaching across light years to touch the strange vessel. It was real. A ship from another galaxy, traveling for what must have been thousands of years to reach them. And inside it, she felt consciousness. Alien minds completely different from anything in the Milky Way. "They've detected us," Sarah said. "They know about the Ascended. That's why they came. Are they friendly?" Marcus asked. Sarah probed deeper, feeling the texture of the alien minds. "They were afraid, yes, but not hostile. They were desperate. Their galaxy is dying. Something is consuming it star by star. They came here looking for help. Can we help them?" Sarah stood, her form beginning to glow with gathered energy. "I don't know, but we're going to try. That's what we do now. That's what we are." She began to dematerialize, preparing to travel to the edge of the galaxy, but paused to look back at Marcus, her old friend, her anchor to humanity's past, sitting in a garden on Earth while she prepared to face a threat from beyond their galaxy. "Was it worth it?" Marcus asked, the same question he had asked 5 years ago. "Becoming what you are?" Sarah looked at the children playing, at the city beyond where humans and aliens lived together, at the stars overhead where billions of transformed beings worked to make the galaxy better. She thought about the challenges ahead, the Remnant's violence, the desperation of the extragalactic refugees, the weight of responsibility that came with godlike power. "We didn't become gods, Marcus," she said, repeating words she had spoken before. "We became what we always were, just finally able to express it fully. We became caregivers for a galaxy that desperately needs care. We became bridges between fear and hope. We became proof that evolution doesn't have to mean domination. That power doesn't have to corrupt, that change doesn't have to destroy." She smiled. And in that smile was the warmth of stars and the patience of eons, but also something very human. Love for a friend, hope for the future, determination to make things better. "Yes, Marcus, it was worth it. Every moment of it." Then she vanished, her consciousness racing across the galaxy to meet the strange ship from beyond. Behind her, Marcus sat in the garden and watched the stars, knowing that somewhere out there, Sarah and millions like her were working to save beings they had never met, protect worlds they would never visit, and build a future where fear no longer ruled the galaxy. The transformation of humanity was complete, but the transformation of the galaxy had only just begun, and it would be glorious.